Thank you, thank you. Nice to be here. I appreciate the invitation. I think the reason I got invited was because they really liked my fee for this talk. That was what sealed the deal. I always start this talk the same way, and that's not how I start the talk. That's how I start the talk. And that is that, somehow we all wound up in this room together, right? So we're all from different places, and we kind of got to this place in different ways in our lives. And what I want you to do is to kind of turn to the person next to you, or two people next to you, and what I'm going to ask everybody to do is to share what I call your origin story. Okay? And so your origin story is just a few points about your life that kind of brought you to this place, that brought you to this point in your life. The highs, the lows, the ups and downs. We're going to do this kind of quickly, so you're just going to pick out 3 or 4 different points in your life, and you're going to share it with the person next to you. Okay? And here's the trick. What I want you to do is to share your little origin story with the person next to you, and then I want the person that you're sharing with to tell you your story back to you. Fair enough? And then you're going to switch places, and then you're going to do the opposite. Any questions? Origin. Good? I think that's a fascinating thing, again, that somehow all these people from all these different backgrounds and all these kind of different walks of life, that we all wind up in the same room together, in the same place at the same time, right? So this is my origin story. Back in 1999, I was the vice president and creative director for one of the largest hospitality marketing companies in the country. And it was a pretty cool job. I got to lead a team that was developing advertising and marketing campaigns for some of the biggest hotel brands in the world. And in my position, I got to travel all over the world and make presentations to chief marketing officers all over the world. So at about 32 years old, that was a pretty heady place to be. And it was really exactly where I'd hoped to be at that point in my career, except for one thing. And that one thing is that I hated going to the office every day. The culture wasn't a good fit for me, and there was something that was just kind of misaligned between my values and the values of the company and my purpose and what I was looking for in my life. I couldn't really define it at the time, but I knew that it wasn't the right fit for me. And so in 2000, I had the opportunity to leave that company and to start my own business. And I did so with one very simple goal. And that goal was that I wanted to make a living, and I wanted to have fun doing it. And I wanted to feel a sense of fulfillment and meaning in the work that I was doing. And that was it. So I started my company in 2000 with that very simple goal. And that worked really, really well as we started kind of moving through the process of growing the company. And what I realized as we started to grow was that in order for me to feel that sense of fulfillment and meaning in my life and my work, I needed to be surrounded by people who also felt that same sense of fulfillment and meaning. And that meant that as we started to hire people, I had to kind of create a culture that allowed them to live this life, a life of meaning, and to have that same sense of purpose and fulfillment that I was having. And all that worked really well from 2000 till about 2008. And anybody here was running a business or working in 2008? We all know what happened, right? So 2008 was when my little business got hit by the recession. And it was really devastating for me. And I won't bore you with the stories of how we kind of muddled our way through that time, only to say that I would basically come to the office every day, and I would get calls from clients who would become friends who simply told me that they couldn't afford our services anymore. And that's a pretty difficult thing to handle as a business owner. And what I realized was that we were changing as we were kind of going through that time, and just all we were doing was we were basically in survival mode. And I'll fast forward to 2010, I'll tell you that we did survive, but just barely and at a cost. And what I mean by that was that in 2010, we were hardly that great company that I had set out to create, the company where I wanted to make a living and have fun doing it, the company where I wanted to feel a sense of fulfillment and meaning in the work that I was doing. In fact, when I looked around in 2010 at the few team members that we had left, we were like any other company. We came to the office every day, we put our heads down, we tried to get as much work done as we could, get invoices out the door and cash in the door, and that became our goal. And that's not really a fun or happy place to be. But in 2010, I realized that we were going to be okay, that we had gotten through the worst of it, that we had clients coming back to us, we were growing again, and things were going to be good. And so in 2010, there was a day when I came into the office early, and I sat down and I decided that it was time not only for us to survive, but to begin to thrive again. And so I sat down and I wrote an email to one of my team members, Diane, who's still with me, and I told her that in order for us to get back to being the company that we were, the company that we had the potential to be, that we needed some new traditions and rituals. And what I told her was that we needed a way to have this sense of camaraderie again, the sense of caring about one another and the sense of commitment to our purpose. And what I figured was that we needed to do more things together. And so I gave her some ideas about how we would start having lunch together one day a week, how maybe on Fridays I would bring in coffee for the team to show them how much I appreciated them. I thought maybe we'd join a bowling league. I thought these ideas were brilliant, and I pushed send, and I waited for Diane to send me an email back telling me how awesome these ideas were, what a genius I was, and how she was totally on board. And I can remember that day because I sat at my computer and I waited, and I waited, and I knew she was in the office, but I didn't want to go confront her because I couldn't figure out what she had to tell me that wasn't an immediate response to my email. And I waited. And finally, an email came back from Diane, and what she told me was that she liked my ideas, but she had an idea of her own. And truthfully, this is typical of Diane, and this is the role that she plays in our office and in my life, in that she takes my thoughts and ideas and she makes them better. But her idea was this. She had this idea that we should have a day in which, yes, all of us would go to lunch, but we would go to lunch someplace in Orlando that nobody had ever been before. And on top of that, we should all wear what she called an accessory that kind of showed our camaraderie, our solidarity with one another. And she called this Unexpected Accessory and Adventure Lunch Day. And I read about Unexpected Accessory Lunch Day in this email in which she described it in great detail, and I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. So this is about as accessorized as I get, right? My shoes and my belt match, it's a good day. That's about all I can handle. And I just thought, we had been through the worst 2.5 years in our business's history and possibly in my professional life. And all I could picture was us kind of walking around Orlando in feather boas or something and people not taking us seriously. But then I thought further about something that one of my mentors had once told me, and that was that a good leader sets the destination and then trusts his team to plot the course to get there. And that was exactly what had happened in this instance. I had told Diane what I wanted us to achieve, and she had recommended this path to get there. And so in 2010, You All Day, as we call it, was born. Unexpected Accessory and Adventure Lunch Day. And You All Day, which we still do to this day, if you can believe it, here are some pictures of You All Day from those early days. There's Hat Day and Glasses Day, and that's Flare Day up in the upper right-hand corner. There's Stripes Day. That was probably my suggestion. That's International Day in the lower right corner, and that's Scarf Day, and that's Boot Day. And there, next to us, to the left in the middle, is the day that we had baby octopi, at some restaurant. And believe it or not, they're not as delicious as they look in that picture. But the interesting thing about You All Day was that it had exactly the effect on our business as I hoped it would have. I think that was pure luck because I'm really not that smart. But it actually did exactly what I hoped it would do, in that it changed the mood of our business. It changed the morale of our team. And rather than us being a team that simply came to work every day and tried to get as much work done as we could and get invoices out the door and money in the door, we became a real team. We cared about one another. We took care of one another. We were there for one another. We supported one another. And it was awesome. And what happened from that point forward was that I began to share the story of You All Day. Of course, I pretended like it was my idea. I began to share the idea of You All Day with everyone that I met. And I shared it with my clients, and I shared it with my colleagues, and I shared it with family members, because everybody that I knew had gone through something similar to what we had gone through in those years from 2007 to 2010. And my recommendation was that you guys should try something like You All Day. And what they would tell me was that they thought that it was an awesome idea for us. They loved hearing the stories about you all day. But what they would tell me is that it simply wouldn't work for them. I got this response literally 100% of the time. You all day sounds great, that would never work here. Logistically, we couldn't all take off for lunch. Oh, everybody wouldn't be into it. People would think it was silly. It wouldn't be accepted. And that made no sense to me. So I started doing some informal polling, and I asked people, what did they want out of life? And 100% of the people that I surveyed told me that what they want from life is to be happy. And that was what You All Day brought back to our team. We were a happy team again. We were having fun at work. We were enjoying the work that we were doing. We were enjoying being with one another. And that was changing us as a company, and I knew that was important. So I started doing some more formal research into this concept of happiness and productivity, and the first guy that I came across was this guy, Sean Acor. Some of you may have heard of him, who's a researcher up at Harvard. And what he tells us very simply is that our brains are more effective when we're happy than when we're not. And in fact, according to his research, our brains are literally 31% more productive when happy than unhappy. Now, who in here would like to start their day tomorrow 31% more productive than they were today? Anybody? Show of hands. Good. That's nearly 100%. I will use that in my next presentation. Moreover, for those of you who are owners of your company or leaders within your company or supervise a team, how many of you would want your team members to be 31% more productive tomorrow than they were yesterday? Exactly. So the question is, if we know this, if we know that happy people are more productive and happy teams are more effective, then why aren't companies doing more? And I've come up with 3 reasons why we don't do more, and here they are. Number 1, because companies still don't believe that happiness matters, despite the fact that there's all this research out there, there are all these books that have been written, there are all these studies that have been done, people still simply refuse to believe it. These people also believe that the earth is still flat, by the way. Number 2, they believe that work and happiness is incompatible, and sometimes this is a generational thing where we believe that work is work and you have your happiness outside of work, right? So these are people who believe strongly in things like TGIF and happy hour, right? You're going to slave away all day and then I'll treat you to drinks afterwards, or we're going to slave away all week and then on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, then you can have your fun. Or number 3, they simply don't know how to integrate happiness with work. They don't know how to make it work. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And one thing that's confusing to me about this whole concept of we know that happiness is important, but we're not willing to make the investment, is that we do make an investment in our team members in several other significant ways. One of them, obviously, is that we understand the importance of investing in the health of our team members, right? Currently, the number is like 67%. 67% of companies have some sort of wellness program in place for their teams. And of course, the majority of companies offer some sort of health insurance program, right? So we get this concept of somehow investing in the health of our team members, and in fact, investing in the health of their families too through most insurance programs. We also kind of get this concept that our team members are reliant on us for an income today, and somehow we should be helping them to make sure that they're going to be secure when they leave our place of employment. So we offer retirement programs, right? And in fact, with a lot of these programs, we offer real dollars. We not only set up these programs for our team members, but we offer real dollars in terms of matching funds and this is a significant benefit for our teams, right? So with the health part, I call that the what if, right? We're going to invest in the what if. What if you get sick? What if you get hurt? What if you get injured? What if your family gets sick? I want to take care of you. The retired part of it, I call this the what then. What then? What happens after you leave my place of employment? I'm going to take care of you. But what I ask is, what about now? What about now? What about the time that you're working for me in my office and I'm relying on you and you're relying on me? Why am I not willing to make this investment? And the truth is that we aren't happy. We aren't happy at work, and that bleeds into our lives, just like it did in my life before I started my company. we aren't happy, and it's costing us a lot of money. And not that money is the only part of it, but it's an important part of it for business owners. And one thing that we know is that the average cost per person of lost productivity is significantly higher for people who are unhappy or disengaged. And the numbers work out something like this. It's about $20,000 a year of lost productivity due to sick days for our unhappy team members versus about $800 for those who are happy. And I bring this up only to help make the argument for why we should be investing in happiness, why we should be making this a priority, and why this should be perhaps one of the most significant efforts we have in our offices if we want to be successful and build successful companies. About a year ago, Harvard Business Review came out with an article that said that the #1 impediment to productivity is the fact that most people come into the office every day and they feel like they have to be somebody they're not. Can you picture that? When I think back on that job where I wasn't the right fit for that position, that was me, right? Literally pulled my car to the parking garage every day, wearing clothes that I didn't feel comfortable wearing. I walked into my office and I made presentations to clients in a format that I didn't feel comfortable making. I treated my team members in the way that HR told me I should treat my team members in a way that wasn't natural for me. That was exhausting. And then I went home and tried to take care of my 2 young kids. Now I have 3 young kids. But this is the reality of the work culture in America. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Not your current job, but does it sound familiar to anybody? Right? We literally put on a costume, we literally play a role when we walk into that office, and that's not good for us personally, and it's not good for our teams. So what we know is that happiness equals engagement, and engagement is our individual commitment to the goals and the mission of our company. Everybody know what the mission of your company is? Does anybody know what the mission of their company is? Good. So whether it is articulated out loud or not, every company has a mission and a purpose, and people are either committed to it or not. And the way that Gallup does this is that they break down all team members, all employees, into 3 categories: the engaged, the disengaged, and the actively disengaged. So the engaged are your team members who come into the office every day and they kind of innately know what to do to move the business forward, right? You barely have to tell them what to do. They come in and they say, we're trying to grow this business, we're trying to cultivate new clients, we're trying to create great products and deliver great services, and I know what to do, and I'm going to do that every day. These are your engaged team members. The disengaged you have to manage. Right? So they come in, if your work hours are 8:30 to 5:30, they clock in at 8:30, they leave at 5:30, they have a to-do list, and they're going to check as many things off that to-do list as they can during the course of that 8-hour day. And then they're going to go home and they're going to come back tomorrow and do the same thing. The actively disengaged are like doing the bare minimum. They're filling a seat, they're occupying a desk, they're getting away with as little work as they can. And more than that, because of the energy and the attitude that they bring into the office, they're literally moving the company backwards away from its goals and mission. Do any of these things sound familiar? You've seen these folks in your workplace or in places that you previously worked? Oops, I lost. Hold on. Technical problems. So I want you to just take a guess. How many, in percentages, what percentage of U.S. workers fall into those bottom 2 categories, the disengaged and the actively disengaged? 65, 50, 70, right? 71%. Who said, Andrea, you said 71%? I was going to give it to you, 71%. So 71% of U.S. workers are either disengaged or actively disengaged. And this, to me, is shocking. So essentially what happens is it becomes the job of those engaged team members just to make up for what's going on with the actively disengaged. So those of you who are truly committed, and I assume that most of you are, you wouldn't be in this program, the work that you're doing in your offices is simply making up for those who are coming in and kind of deteriorating the objectives of your company or organization. It's almost like with this situation, the best we can do is to stay where we are. The best we can do is to tread water. So let me share a couple of other fun statistics with you. When we do our polling, 80% of workers say they don't like their jobs. Does this surprise anybody? So we have, what do we have, 50 people in this room? That means 40 of you, if I polled you, would tell me that you don't like their jobs. Hopefully, I won't ask for a show of hands. And on the one hand, I find this completely unacceptable. And on the other hand, I find it completely unsurprising. Because when I ask people about their day, when I ask people about their jobs, it's always negative. Right? So if I ask you how your day is, at the end of the day, you're going to tell me that it was stressful, it was crazy, it was hectic, it was insane, it was overwhelming. This is the language that we use around work. So it's no wonder that when Deloitte does its polling and asks us if we like our jobs, we say no. Right? 67% of people say that they're going to leave their job within the next year. Now all of a sudden that engaged poll makes a lot of sense, right? If I'm leaving within a year, then how committed am I to the work that I'm doing? So when you go back to your offices tomorrow and you see all those people in their offices or their cubicles huddled in front of their monitors, you know that they're updating their LinkedIn profile, right? 2/3 of the people you're working with think that they're not going to be there in a year. And then to make matters worse, the millennial generation in the workplace, who I love, I truly do. But this is one statistic that bothers me. We don't expect them to stay in any one job for more than 2.5 years. This is different than previous generations. Say what you want about my generation, Generation X, the slackers, the apathetic generation. We don't care. We stayed in our jobs. We were committed to the work that we were doing, and certainly our parents were too. Millennials look at things differently. And this isn't their fault. And in fact, when I've given this talk to a group of millennials, they immediately tell me that it's not their fault. But it is something that we have to deal with. 2.6 years, that's not enough. How long does it take to onboard somebody into your organization, to teach them about the way that you work, your standards, your qualities?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, because the millennials are changing their jobs, are they happier compared to the other generations? Has that whole been what prompts them?
No. What prompts them to change their jobs? Well, so you want to push the pause button and talk about the generational differences in the workplace? So there are 3 generations in the workplace currently, right? So there are boomers, and the boomers are the majority of in the executive level, the majority of the leaders or supervisors in the workforce right now. They're the Gen Xers, we're the smallest group, and then there are the millennials, who are currently the largest group working in America today, right? And we all have very different attitudes toward work, and that's where the conflict comes in. For the, I'm really getting off topic here, so if you don't want to talk about this, then tell me now. But the boomers had a very different work ethic. The boomers grew up thinking that their contract with their employer was that their employer was going to take care of them from the time they started till the time they retired, and then even take care of them after that. This was our agreement. But the agreement looks something like this. You're going to come work for me. So I'm going to describe, you're going to come work for me. You're going to clock in every day at 8:30, and you're not going to be late because I'm going to be watching, and HR is going to be watching. And you're not going to leave until 5:30, not a minute earlier, not to pick up your kids from school, not to go to their softball games, not because your wife is sick and you want to pick up chicken soup at 2J's for her. This is our agreement. You're going to work from 8:30 to 5:30. You're going to wear a suit every day. You're going to call me Mr. Freed, by the way. And you're only going to have access to me when you come through my secretary and ask her if you can come see me. But in return for that, I'm going to pay you. I'm going to give you health insurance. And when you retire, there's a pension waiting for you at the end. Right? So it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be happy. But you're going to retire, and I'm going to take care of you. And we have kind of this paternalistic agreement. The millennials, on the other hand, they don't want to defer anything. They want this full and complete and robust life now. And part of the reason that they want that is because they saw what happened in those kind of intervening years from the boomers to today, where that contract disintegrated. Those pensions went away. The employer's loyalty to the employee went away, right? If I can find someone less expensive to replace you, chances are I'm going to do it because Wall Street is watching. And all that really matters is my bottom line. And you saw that happening. And so now all of a sudden, you don't have that same sense of loyalty to me because you don't feel that loyalty from me. And beyond that, you want to be able to go see your kids play soccer every day. You want to pick your kids up from school. You want to travel. You want all of these things, and you want them now, right? So your way of thinking is that I'm going to continue to move around. I don't have this sense of loyalty to my employer, and whatever I have to do to live this life that I want, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take care of me first. That's a completely different thing than what our parents had, and Gen X is just kind of caught somewhere in the middle. We kind of, survived this kind of tumultuous change in the relationship between employer and employee. But I say that, and my point of view as a business owner is that one of us has to change. One of us has to take a step towards the other one and create some sort of, create some sort of middle ground, right? And since I own my own company and I'm the employer, I'm willing to do that. And that's really what this talk is all about, is that because it's important to me to have a loyal team, because I don't want you to leave after 2.6 years because that's bad for my company and bad for our culture, I'm going to try to create a different kind of environment for you to work in so that you're going to stay longer. My goal is for my company to be the anomaly. I can't afford to have 80% of my team members disliking their job. I can't afford to have 67% of my team members thinking that they're going to leave after a year. And I can't afford to have you change jobs every 2.6 years. So I'm going to make a change. Okay. So the question is, what would happen if we invested in the happiness of our team members? And what we find is that it improves everything, literally everything. We have lower absenteeism. We have a greater commitment to the quality of the work that we do. There's less turnover. There's higher productivity. We treat our customers and clients better. And ultimately, there's higher profitability. So what we need to ask ourselves is how we get there. And what we know is that happiness flourishes in the right environment and under the right leadership. And that's appropriate today because we're all leaders, right? That's why we're in Leadership Winter Park. So because we're in Leadership Winter Park, and we always get asked this question, what is leadership? Leadership for me is a very simple question, and that question is, what conversations happen because you're in the room? And I want you to think about that for a minute. For me, when a leader walks in a room, when a leader is addressing his team, when a leader is just simply having casual conversation with his team, there's a different type of conversation that happens. When managers address their team, they're talking about deadlines and budgets and timelines. How do they grow their client base? When leaders talk to their team, ideas come out, people feel inspired, people are talking about opportunity. It's a wholly different thing, but we have to make the effort to be that leader, to change the way that we talk to our team. So what I want to talk about is how we get to happiness. How we get to happiness. And the easiest place to start is to change the way that we talk about work. So again, Sean Achor tells us that we think of happiness and work as opposites. And that's because that's the language that we bring into the office, right? We talk about things like TGIF, and we talk about things like happy hour. And even millennial-driven companies have kegs in the office and things like that, which is all wonderful and nice, but what it says to your teams is, we're going to work like dogs, and then we're going to celebrate and forget it, as opposed to giving people this sense of purpose and meaning behind the actual work that they're doing. Happy hours are great. I have nothing against happy hours. I love happy hours. We're going to have a happy hour today. but they're not the antidote for creating a bad work culture, right? We need to think more deeply than that. I love this quote, "The words you speak become the house you live in." Think about how you talk in your office. Think about the way that you talk about your clients. Think about the way that you talk about vendors. Think about the way that you talk about the economy. If we're talking negatively about these things, then that becomes the culture. We give people permission to vent and complain versus thinking more positively about what we're doing and what we're after. So happy teams share some common traits, and this is the only important slide in this whole presentation. Happy teams feel valued and valuable. And let me help you to understand that. This is really all any of us are seeking, and I will over-explain this in a minute, but for now, it's really quite simple. You want to know that you aren't just filling a seat in my office, that you're working for me because I value you personally, you individually, your personality, your insight, your intellect, your energy, that I value you as an individual. And furthermore, you want to know that the work that you produce, the thing that I ask you to do every single day, is valuable and worthwhile, and that I appreciate it. That the work that you do is valuable in the sense that it's helping our clients, or that it's helping us as a business to grow and to thrive, and that you are a part of that. You are an important part of that. So you understand, individually valued, and the work you produce is valuable. If we could convince everybody on our team of these two things, it would radically change your culture. To take it one step further, everybody wants to feel listened to, right? We come up with these complex ways of trying to create these cultures or these benefit packages and make people feel a sense of worth in our office, but what they really want is simply to feel listened to. They want to know that their voice is heard and that their voice is important. And that's not just on big things, that's on little things too. When people walk into your office, do you turn away from your computer and face them and look them in the eye and listen to what they're saying? Or do you let them talk while you, quote unquote, multitask? It's the small gestures that make a huge difference. So for me, I talk about this in terms of what I call PACE. And PACE is a very simple acronym that I think and I truly believe is what we're all after. And PACE stands for purpose, autonomy, connections, and engagement. And my sense is that when we have these four things, we feel a sense of fulfillment, a sense of meaning, a sense of happiness. And when we don't, we don't. And the way that I want you to think about PACE as I walk through each of the four parts of it is that it's not only something that we're striving to find for ourselves, but it's something that we have an opportunity and I think an obligation to give to other people. And we can do this. So the P is for purpose, and simply put, we enjoy doing work when we're doing work for a reason. Right? Again, going back to that valuable piece. If we feel like the work that we're doing is valuable and it's for some greater purpose or for us to benefit somebody else, we don't mind doing it. We don't mind working hard when we're working hard for a reason. It's when we feel like the work is not appreciated or the work is not valuable or the work is not serving anybody that it feels like drudgery. The A is for autonomy, and we all want to feel a sense of control over the work that we do. And this even goes back to the story I told about you all day, telling Diane that she could determine what our traditions and rituals are and not be micromanaged by me. That's a big difference. Managers control and leaders trust. Leaders set that destination and then give you the autonomy to plot the course, to work the way that you want to work, to bring the ideas that you want to bring, all in an effort to help us as an organization reach some point down the path. Connections. We talk about this idea that business is not personal, and it's just not true, right? We spend 8 to however many hours in our office every day with the people sitting next to us. We crave sincere and authentic relationships with everybody in our lives, not just outside of work. And to think that we could have these distant or impersonal relationships in our office, and that's okay, and that will work, is just wrong. And then finally, engagement. And engagement, to me, is a really interesting thing. Engagement is this sense that the talents that we have, that we value, are being used in challenging ways. And this is a complicated way to explain this, but I hope it makes a little bit of sense. That if there's something that I do that I'm very proud of, some talent or some skill that I bring to my team that makes me feel a great sense of worth, and you have me work on a project that uses that talent in a challenging way, that gives me an incredible sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. If you ask me to do something challenging that I don't have the talent for, that creates anxiety. And if you ask me to do something that's not very challenging, that I feel like I have a good talent for, that is boring, or that creates a sense of apathy, right? So if you're a team leader, a supervisor, a manager, what you want to do is to understand what talents your team members think are valuable to them, that they cherish, and give them projects that challenge them, that challenge those talents. And for you personally, you have to be vocal about what you want to be doing and ask for projects and opportunities to use your talents in challenging ways. So that's what I want you to think about in terms of PACE, is to focus not only on PACE for yourself, how you bring purpose, autonomy, connections, and engagement to your own life, but also how you can gift that to the people around you. And that will radically change your office. And I'm just going to show you quickly, on our team, this is what that looks like for us. These are the traditions and rituals around PACE. So we try to ignite individual growth. That means helping every individual on our team feel a sense of fulfillment in the work that they're doing in the office, and also encourage them, and I'll show you that in a second, to fulfill their dreams and goals outside the office, inspire team togetherness, to respect personal lives, to build the community together, to support meaningful work, and then to model this sense of PACE. So this is very hard to see, but our traditions around this are that we have every full-time team member gets a 40-hour sabbatical. They get 1 week of paid time to go pursue a goal or a dream. We have our You All Day, which we talked about before, what we call flexibility with responsibility. That means that everybody understands that the team as a whole is counting on them, and that the individual team members are counting on them to do their job. As long as they fulfill that sense of responsibility, then they have the flexibility to go to their kids' soccer games. Our whole goal with this is that we don't want our team members to feel a sense of conflict between work and home while they're at the office or when they're at home. We have our annual Think-a-thon, where 26.2 hours of work for one nonprofit locally. We do quarterly volunteer days. We have an exercise we call stakeholder expectations, where we get all of our team members aligned with our purpose and understanding what our expectations are for them as part of our team. And then finally, we're committed to making sure that everybody on the team, no matter what their role is a leader in some way. So the question I have for you as we wrap up is, what might happen? Right? So we talked about what the work culture looks like in the U.S. 80% of U.S. workers say they hate their jobs. 67% say they're going to look for another job, or they think they're going to be at another job in a year. We know that we invest in the health of our team members. We know that we invest in retirement, but we don't invest in today. And what would happen if we change that? And the answer is that happy, healthy, and loyal people make productive, successful, and powerful teams. And that's what we call a happy ending. Thank you.